Hello, YouTube land. This is Brentonsawin coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. Today, I have a guest that I've been talking to for a few weeks now, and he has some interesting Bigfoot stories and has been sending me all kinds of different pictures and things like that, trying to figure out what's going on. But anyway, I think that we'll just let him introduce himself and tell his story. But before we do that, though, if anyone out there has a story they'd like to share on the show, you can contact me at brentonsawin@gmail.com. If you want to contribute to help with this show, you can contribute at PayPal Me. The link is in the description, and it's super easy to use. Just click the link, and you'll figure it out from there. But anyway, let's go to our guest, and I'll let him introduce himself. Hey, Paul, how you doing, man?
Pretty good, Brendan. Thank you.
All right. If you would, Paul, tell about yourself as much as you want to, and where you live and stuff like that, and then just go into your Bigfoot stories and tell them through the sequence that you think is relative to what you are trying to convey, and I'm going to give you the floor. All right?
Okay. Thank you, Brendan.
Right. You're welcome.
Okay. My name is Paul. I'm 47. I'm from Bakersfield, California, which is the southern end of the San Joaquin Valley, Central California. I think that, just to say where my location is, I'm at the lower end of there's state national forests and national parks for up north for 285 miles. So all these several different parks and forests are all connected. It's like one big green mountain range, and I'm at the end of that in the Sequoia National Forest, but it goes all the way up. That's the lower end, is the Sequoia National Forest. So I served 4 years in the Marine Corps, and I'm a combat veteran, Desert Storm. I want to say that because I still try to use my training from the 4 years. Even though I've gotten older, some of these things that I learned as a young Marine at Camp Pendleton and going overseas a couple of times, I've tried to use those in my life. So as a young kid, I lived about 30 miles out of town on a ranch with family, and I was always out in the orchards or out in the fields trying to shoot rabbits, birds, squirrels. So I was always trying to snoop and poop, until I got into the Marine Corps. So I am a retired medical retired veteran. So I've been allowed to retire. My last job I was a fisherman from the end of 2001 until I came home in 2010. So, but Brendan, I'm going to kind of go back, if it's okay, to tell about my first encounter, which is very brief, but still I think it's important. Lake Isabella is a lake that's a camp, and I don't want to. It's part of the Sequoia National Forest, but there's a lot of people that go camping up there, and it's a beautiful country up there. I love Bakersfield, and I care about it a lot. But I'm gonna be honest. So my grandfather, who was a World War II veteran, we would go up there during the summers, and on the weekends we'd go fishing all around the Central Valley at the lakes and the aqueduct, and we would go up there during the summer, and I was between 5 or 7, but I remember that one time being very small, and there was a person, not necessarily, it was a hairy person that tried to coaxed me, like kind of waved me, like to come here, come here. She gave me like two little waves. She didn't say a word, but the look of her startled me very much, and I started crying. And my grandfather came over and saw her as she was leaving, and I could tell that my grandfather got startled because my grandfather had like a little 22 caliber pistol or something that I saw. And we stayed there for the rest of that evening or the rest of that afternoon, and then we left. So, okay. So moving to 2009. So I had been in Alaska for 8 years, and I traveled a little bit. I went to Jamaica, to the Philippines, to Thailand, South Korea. When I was off the boats, I traveled a little bit around the States. So I came back to California to visit family, and I stopped at one of my cousin's house here in Bakersfield to visit with him, who I hadn't seen for quite a while, almost a year. And while I was there, a friend of the family that I grew up with that lived in the same neighborhood says, "Hey, how are you? I haven't seen you for a while." We spoke for a little bit, and he says, "Hey, I want to go scout an area for the upcoming deer season, and I don't want to go out by myself. Are you busy tomorrow?" And I said, "No, I'm going to be here for a week." So, okay, sure. Spend a little time with him. So the next afternoon, he picked me up, and we drove a couple of hours from Bakersfield to the Sequoia Forest. I don't want to say exactly where, but a couple of hours away from Bakersfield. And so we drive into the forest, and we park at an area that he knows, that he's been several times. I don't believe it's not something that he knows very well. It's just an area that he knows of. Hey, this is where we're supposed to go hunting. So we go up there and we park and we start hiking. And the sun is out, and it's not during the winter months, because all I have is pants and a sweater that I have tied around my waist, and the same with him. And I've got a Rambo knife in a sheath, and he's carrying a 30-06 rifle, and he's got 5 rounds. So it's daylight. It's about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're hiking. And it was very fast, Britton. I would say about 30 minutes after we got there. I mean, we had parked. We're maybe 15 miles, 20 miles already into the park where we parked, into the national forest. So and I went out there looking to track. I'm like, hey, I want to see if I can track a deer. We're out here. This is for real. I'm trying to really track something. Even though it's not deer hunting, I'm like, I want to see if I can track something. So we're looking, and I find three toe prints. They look like, 3 toe prints. And looking back, all I really noticed was the footprints. I didn't actually pay attention to the rest of it. I was so in my mind, this has got to be bear. So because, the being 7 years old Bigfoot episode hadn't even popped in my mind. I hadn't even thought about it, nothing for all this time. So I said, hey, look, this is a bear. I think this is bear. So he says, well, hey, you want to see if we can find it? And I said, yeah, let's try. Let's see if we can track this sucker down. So, we're moving off the trail, and we're moving and still tracking. The tracks were visible. We followed them, and we followed them for a little over an hour, looking for them on the trail. They followed like an off trail, and we followed them to this big old bush, and there was scat around the bush, and I thought, there's something there. And while I was in Alaska on Kodiak Island, when we came near a grizzly bear, they would move away. The big one, it it must have been 800 or 900 pounds, the grizzly bear on Kodiak, Alaska. It popped up on its butt, and you could see it. We were about maybe 50, 60 yards from it, and I still thought that was kind of close. And one of my buddies that was there from the boat that I was working on was taking the pictures with a 35 millimeter camera, and it was going, and I thought, man, that is too loud. That's how big this darn bear was. And I thought, if 35 miles an hour, he could be on us pretty quick. So we had a rifle with us, and so we step away, we move away from that animal, and we're still looking around, hiking. And
go through your encounters and sequence how you see fit to do it.
Okay.
All right.
Well, we find a female bear at a creek, and we left her alone. So on the way back to the cabin to go back to the captain with the guy that we were working for, we startled a smaller bear, a youngling, maybe, well, my buddy said he was probably maybe 18 months, but he was still rather large. But he kind of he fell from off the little cliff and made a kind of crazy, and then he took off running down the beach. So I was kind of thinking in my mind the same thing at the Sequoia Forest. If the bear sees us or smells us, he's going to move away from us. He's going to take off. So we're there for a couple of minutes, and I throw a couple of rocks in, and my buddy's got the gun just in case. We're not there to kill anything. We're not there poaching or anything. We're just trying to see if it's there. And I had a feeling that something was there, but nothing came out or nothing showed itself. So I got this feeling, this awkward feeling, and I thought, man, we need to get out of here. And I looked at him, and I think maybe the look on me kind of startled him a little bit, and he says, okay, well, let's move back then. So we start moving back, and then that's when everything started. We started trying to move back to the trail. Okay, yes. Do you know where we're going? Yes, we're going back this way. This way is to the main trail. I'm pretty sure. We were so focused on tracking whatever we were tracking that honestly, I don't know because Bigfoot hadn't even crossed my mind. I don't know if he thought that possibly it was that because I know he'd been out there before, or if he was honestly thought, okay, it's just a bear that we're trying to track. So we're trying to find our way back, and we come to this little area, and I said, so which way? Do we go up? Do we go down or up? Obviously, we know that the truck is somewhere down there, but we're already, we're a couple of miles from the truck, and it's starting to get dark now. And we're still far enough that he's saying, well, we need to make time because we don't want to be out here when it gets dark. And I said, so which way? And he says, let's go that way. And it was, well, yes, he says that way. So we start to go that way, and well, so we're moving, and then we start hearing noises, Brenton, like we're walking on a road. It's a road big enough for a car or a truck to fit, and then it's got foliage on the right and left. So we're in the middle of the forest. But I mean, there's trees and there's bushes, but it's actually kind of thick. And at first I hear I'm like, do you hear that? And he's like, what? And I'm like, it sounds like something's walking. And then he's like, at first he didn't hear it. And then a little bit later, because I'd say about maybe a half hour after, I started hearing something, which to me, I could barely hear it, but it sounded like in 5th grade, 4th grade band class, when you first take band class, that little flute, that little plastic flute, it makes that that kind of sound, but that's what it sounded like to me. And I was like, it kind of got me kind of upset because I felt that somebody was there and I didn't know what they were doing. I thought somebody was kind of messing with us. So, but now from doing a little research, it's called, from listening to it on the YouTube, it's called samurai chatter. So I didn't know that back then. So now it's almost dark. We've been out there for 4 hours and the sun's coming down and we're lost. So we're like, well, what should we do? And I'm kind of like, so I'm actually saying out loud, hey, whoever you are that's following us, and there was a crow that it seemed, well, there were several crows that were making noises. At first, when we were in the trail, they would make noise like one or two that would see us, but there was crows that were making noise that were inside the forest area. And it seemed like there was one crow that followed us for an hour and a half until it got dark. It sounded like the same crow, and that made me very uneasy. I felt something was wrong. There was definitely something off. I'm not necessarily saying wrong yet, but definitely off with the noises and all this stuff. Honestly, I thought maybe it was some rangers, you know, like law enforcement, the park rangers, thinking that we were out there trying to shoot something that's not in season or something. That's what my mind was thinking. And my buddy and I, we're still not talking about like what it was. We're just on guard. We're not saying, are you scared or I'm scared? We were both on alert. So he says, look, I don't want to go down. I don't want to pass the truck because I'm not sure where we're at yet. So we climbed up a little bit far, a couple of more hours. He says, if we go up, I'll know where we're at because from the top, I'll see the bottom if we have to go that high. So we didn't even have to go that high. It was about 10 o'clock and we came into another main road, and then like a light bulb, he goes, I know where we're at now. And then he says, man, we're like 7 miles from the truck. That's how far we had gone. In 5 or 6 hours. That's how far we had gone. That's how far we had hiked. So it's about 10 o'clock and we stopped in this clearing and he says, hey, let's just wait here for a minute. You know, like I want to see what's going on. And I'm kind of with him. And it's open area. I'd say about like a box, like 20 yards by 20 yards. That's how big it was. It was kind of small, but it was large enough, and we stood right in the middle. And I looked around using my military training, and I made a mental note of everything that's around us. You know, I'm like, okay, if somebody's going to be sneaky or do something, at least, you know, let's see what's going on here. So I spoke with my buddy for naturally, just speaking, you know, are you tired? You know, I'm getting hungry. You know, man, at least we know where we're at now. And I turn around, Brenton, and I see two silhouettes standing right inside the forest line. And my whole body got tight. I mean, like, ooh, you know, like, holy cow. And I said, do you see that? And he says, what? And I said, look over there. And he sees it also. And he must have seen something because he turned and faced south. I was facing north. And we weren't back to back. We were kind of, we had our backs to each other, but I was stepping to the side. And man, that big one, he was like, at first I couldn't tell exactly how big it was because he was standing like right in the bush line, like camouflaged with the bush line. And I could tell that it was big though, and I was afraid. I was kind of looking down. I didn't want to look up at it because that's how big it was. 7 to 8 feet, easy. I would say closer to 8. And I couldn't tell how big it was. Well, And then I see the smaller one, which was inside the bush line, but not even camouflage. I mean, it was just like right in the open. I mean, it was trying to stand by the bush line, but there was no bush line. It was like a tree and a couple of bushes, and it stuck out like a sore thumb. Like we could clearly see the whole silhouette. So I tell my buddy, I'm like, hey, whatever you are, announce yourself right now. We can see you. We've got a loaded weapon. What's going on? Because I'm still thinking, actually, then I started thinking, that's not law enforcement. That's for sure not law enforcement. And I'm asked, having guard duty, I started doing my general orders. Started announce yourself. We've got a gun. I'm starting to get a little nervous, kind of fearful. So I tell my buddy, hey, give me the rifle. I'm going to go over there. I'm going to find out what's going on. And, I was prepared. I went back to combat mode, but my buddy says, no. We're not going to do that. And I'm thinking to myself, brother, there's something right there that's been following us for the last 4 hours since we got to that bush. And, I'm not sure what you want to do, but you've got a gun. And if I feel like we're being stalked and hunted, and honestly, I did. So he says, I'm going to fire a shot in the air, and we'll see what happens. So I said, okay, hold on. Give me a second. And I could look at the big one, and out of my peripheral, I could still see the smaller one. And I told him, okay, on 3. So he says, 1, 2, 3, and he fired the rifle. And when he fired the rifle, I seen how big that thing was. It must have been 500 pounds at least, maybe more. But in 2 steps, it turned around and it walked into the bush line. And right as soon as he walked in, right before he disappeared, he turned. And he was magnificent. He was so huge. He was muscular. I could see his butt muscles and his back. And he didn't have no neck. He just had it was like a head and then the muscles on the back of the neck that stuck out. And you could see his muscles as he walked, as he turned. I mean, and this happened so fast. He was jet black because there was a half a moon out. He was jet black, and you could see the shine on his hair. Like if it reminded me of a dog when it's just shampooed, and then you could see the glare off of its hair. And right before he disappeared, I seen 2 rose. I'll say kind of like a digital, like an infrared kind of like a glare that came from they had to be his eyes, and then boom, he was gone. And this happened so fast. Simultaneously, when we fired the shot, this guy turned around and walked into the bush in 2 steps. The smaller one started to charge my buddy that just shot the gun, and he's got his back turned to something else. So I have my knife out, and I step in front of him, behind him, in front of her, and I say, ha, ha, like an animal to stop. And she stopped, and she was 10 yards from us, and she was breathing, and I couldn't tell yet that she was a female yet. All I knew is that I could see her, and she was breathing, and she had her eyes closed, and she was like huffing, like she was very angry, and she was about 5'8", and she looked like she weighed about 270 pounds, but muscle. I mean, she was that stocky. And I'm like, I'm still thinking, I'm in survival mode. I'm like, I didn't even have time to be frightened by the big guy. I'm looking at her. I realize that we're in survival mode, and my buddy's still looking the other way. So obviously he sees something. So, or he didn't want to look at them. He didn't even want to let them see his face. But I'm like, So I'm like, you know, what are you? I can see you. You're right there. And it was standing there with its eyes closed while squinting, and I felt like it was feeling like if I have my eyes closed, it's going to see me, and they're not going to see me, and it's going to go away. And we literally had like a standoff for about 60, 75 seconds. And I'm like, open your eyes. I can see you. Open your eyes. Brenton, when it opened its eyes, it looked just like, here's exactly what I'll say, like the Planet of the Apes, the Mark Wahlberg one, the monkey, the smaller one that's always jumping around, that gets caught in the ship at the end and keeps firing the laser gun and it keeps ricocheting. That same look that he has at the end of that movie, the eyes were light brown, like you hear the amber color. That's exactly what it had, and I could tell that it looked like a female to me. I mean, I got a really good look at it, and when she opened her eyes, my knees buckled. I was like, holy cow. Like, I got frightened. I got startled. I got scared. You know, I hear something that, I mean, all this time, you know, 4 or 5 hours of working this all up, you know, and then it's down to this. And in my opinion, I thought if she would have got to us, she would have harmed us pretty good. And my buddy's smart enough to know that, you know, we need to be careful here because there's that big one still running around here, and I think there's some more. There's other ones outside the line, and we didn't even have to speak that. So I talked to her. I said, you know what? Look, we're very sorry. We're in your forest. We came out to look around today. We got lost. We don't want to get hurt, and we don't want to hurt you. You know, when the morning comes up, we're going to leave, and we won't be back. And I looked right at her, and I said, now turn around and go. Go back to the bush. Go away and leave us alone. And it took her a minute, but it registered, and she turned around, and she walked back into the bush. And right before she got to the bush, she turned and she looked at me like, I'm not sure if it was like, you are very lucky or I'm going to get my hands on you. Well, they went back into the bush. We stayed, my buddy and I stayed in that open area. Actually, it got cold on us. I dug like a little fighting hole, kind of little ditch kind of thing, and I laid down. I put some leaves in there, and I laid down in there for a minute because I was tired. We had been hiking, and all the dang excitement from what just happened. And my buddy, I told him, I just want to rest for a little bit. So we stayed there for about 50 minutes. And then he goes, hey, I'm cold, man. Come on, let's go. I know there's a cabin up there somewhere. So we hiked up higher for about another 2 hours, and we came across this little cabin that he knew that had been up there from prior times, from being up there with other people. And, well, I wasn't sure. I mean, I was, even after all that, I was like, I don't want to get in trouble for anything. And he's like, man, we'll deal with that later. You know, we're getting inside. So we used a knife. He popped the little window open, and we went inside the cabin. And while we're inside, right after we got inside the cabin, we were kind of nervous and looking at each other, and we were very grateful to be inside. And I said, you know what? Let's see if they're still out there. Let's figure out. So I said, let's do a little sniper trick. So I said, go look in the window. Look out in the window for just a minute, and then when I say turn around, put your back to the window and walk away so they can see your back. And he did that, and when he turned around, I was standing back about 5 feet, so I could see out, but they couldn't see in. And when he turned around to walk away, a smaller one that was grayish brown shot from one side of the cabin window to the other side, so they were still out there. So I wasn't feeling good, Brenton. I honestly, I even told him, I feel like there's something in my head, and I honestly said, I don't do the I stay away from the supernatural stuff. But I told him, man, I feel like they're in my head. I feel like they can see what I'm seeing. I said, I know that's kind of hard, but I can't explain it. So I went and I laid down and I fell asleep for a few hours. And then he woke me up. The next thing is he woke me up and he said, it's going to be light here, so let's go. And we walked down to the truck and we left. That was the 2009 experience. And that is as close and as true as I can make it.
Man, that is crazy, dude. Now, wow.
It was very scary.
Yeah, shoot, far, dude. That's pretty dang scary. Now, when you explained the first encounter, when you were 7, can you kind of go over that just a little bit and kind of piece how that kind of helped you understand what you...
Well, here's... Okay, and then when I go back, because it wasn't until after the 2009 encounter did that first encounter come back into my mind very clearly.
Right.
And...
So explain it now. Since you told your 2009 encounter, go back now and explain that and kind of explain that, how that come into play.
Okay.
Please.
Well, after coming back home, and to be honest, when I went back to Alaska, I mean, I had, after the encounter, I had like 3 or 4 days left of being in California before I went back on the boats. I had just came back from somewhere, but I was literally like visibly shaken, like my PTSD was in full swing. I mean, I was not well. It took me, a couple of weeks to get rid of that fear, I guess, that shakiness that I had, that I usually don't have. Usually I'm pretty, I'll take things head on, but to find something that to me was, I heard stories and I seen the Patterson stuff on TV, and I thought possibly, but like I said, even though it wasn't until after this encounter that being 6 or 7 years old with my grandfather, did I see it like that's exactly what it was that made me cry when I was 6 or 7 years old, that startled my grandfather, that made us leave the campsite. And it's kind of crazy. I don't know. I mean, kind of like,
Well, explain that encounter again, because that's a hard encounter to get when you explain that first.
Okay. Well, when I was younger, when I was like 6 or 7 years old, like I said, my grandfather was a World War II veteran, so he liked camping and fishing, and he had been hunting. And myself and my 2 younger brothers, his second youngest daughter, we were always with my grandparents. We lived with my grandparents when my parents were going through their divorce, and then my mom bought the house next door to my grandfather's house. So we were always, I mean, from the time I was very small until I left into the Marine Corps, I was always with my grandfather, even after I got out of the Marine Corps. But so we were like his, it seemed like to keep him from getting bored. Let's go. We're going camping, we're going fishing, all this stuff. We'd go with my grandfather. He had us with him in trail all the time. And it wasn't just myself. He would take my dad out there with us and my uncles, and, we would go out and hang with my grandfather. My grandfather liked being out there. And so it was during one of these camping trips when I was 6 or 7 years old, being up at Lake Isabella, at the campsite is called Hungry Gulch. That's the name of the campsite, and it's one of the main campsites there. I remember that because there's only 1 or 2 that my grandfather went to, And up there at the campsite in the trees, while we were camping near the campsite, one of those, and it was a female. It was a female Bigfoot. It was black, and she wasn't. It's kind of, now that when I look at it, Brenton, the two later encounters, they look different. Their body style and their colors were different. The very first one was black. The 2009 beings, I'll call them beings because, to me they looked like they were orangutan and gorilla features with almost like humanized, human type, also with human features. I was very thrown off by seeing it clearly, but I'll get to that. But so as a 7-year-old, I got startled. I seen it. It tried to, gave me the come here, like if I'm scooping something up with my arm, with my hand, Brenton, it waved me over like that from behind a tree, like come over here, come, and it wasn't showing me scary or nothing. It was just come over here, and I got really scared, I started crying loud, and my grandfather, hustled over there, and he saw it walking away. I did some research, and from the early, say 1970 up until present, outside of and even though Bakersfield has gotten bigger, we're a farming and oil community that, stuff that 40 years ago that were outside of town are on the outskirts of town now. You know what I mean, Brenton?
Yeah.
It's kind of grown out a little bit, but there's been sightings and footprints and possible activity for 40 years. Sometimes, people get so caught up that they don't want to acknowledge, what other people are saying, but so, I'm not saying anything I'm not saying anything bad. I'm just saying what my experience, and people can choose to believe it or not. But I take everything on your show, and the sightings that have been reported, and those are just the ones that have been reported, Brenton. I take all those, very seriously. I try to give them their weight that they're due. Sometimes, even like when I was in the 2009 encounter, when we got lost, because I'm already thinking, Brenton, I've got a story here, because, I'm not thinking that I'm going to be fighting for my life in 3 hours, but
right.
when we got lost, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, right. Like, people are never going to believe this story, kind of thinking, even though in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, I hope we get out of here soon. I hope we find our way back so we can get back down soon, and everything changed once it got dark.
Dude, that's a scary encounter. And when you got to the cabin and they were still there looking, that tells you right there that they are very astute with the with recon. As a military person, you know that recon's not that easy. If you're watching these people and you're trying not to get detected and what have you, all of a sudden they take off and you're able to follow them and then be that astute about observing them when they go by, look out a window, and then another one goes by the window. That means they're reconning you better than you are them. And
what it was trying to do was, in my opinion, it was saying, well, where's the other one at? So they were trying to get a vantage point to where they could see inside the cabin better, you know, and see where I'm at. What am I doing? You know, and actually, Brenton, I don't even know. I mean, because I was out for 2.5 hours. I mean, I just usually I still can't believe that I passed out, that I fell asleep.
But
you know,
you got to remember too, man. If you watch the show long enough, you'll realize too that you get hit with infrasound many times that would cause you to get sleepy. There's so many tactics they have that are beyond anything that anyone even comprehends. Some people comprehend it because they've listened to this stuff enough, but you could be in the woods and get hit with infrasound and not know it, and all of a sudden you're getting sleepy and you can't understand why. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't hardly stay awake, you know. So you get back to this cabin, and all of a sudden you're so sleepy you can't, you fall asleep, and your friends are there dealing with it, and these things are still out around the cabin, reconning you, dude. I mean, you know, it's crazy.
That's what I was
going
to say, Brenton. This my buddy, who, you know, in 2009 I was 39, and my buddy was just 2 years older than I am, and basically he stood guard, you know, with the rifle, and when he woke me up, he looked like he was white as a ghost, you know, and he's dark complected, and I thought, and I felt bad, but I thought, you know what, we both had to do our part to get to sunlight, you know. We both did what we had to do, and we both saved each other's butts. Honestly, that's what I felt. I mean, because that was a real encounter. And like with the picture that I sent to you, Brenton, I believe that the larger one was holding something. The way it was standing, I believed it was holding like a large stump or something. You know, right between its legs, right in front of its legs.
But you sent me so many pictures, I don't know which one you're talking about. So if you want me to put that in the video, then you'll have to send that and say, this is the picture. Let's move on to the next story. And so we agree that you'll say, hey, this is the next picture, and I'll put that in.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, sir.
Here at this spot here. And then from here, let's move on to your next
okay.
portion.
Next encounter.
Right.
Okay. Well, excuse me. Okay. I came home from Alaska in March of 2010, and I had to have a couple of surgeries. I had a triple hernia, came home, was fixed, went back out, and retore myself, and the doctor said, you know, hey, you need to find another line of work, or you need to give yourself a couple of years of no hard labor. Otherwise, you know, you could permanently damage yourself. So I went to, I had been away from my hometown for almost 18 years working, you know, and kind of beat myself up, you know, the only time that I was off was injury timeouts, you know, after surgeries or hurting myself. So I went and I spent a year at the West LA VA hospital, and I did, you know, was seen by the doctors, and I mean, the people there are trying to help the veterans. I mean, they're awesome. And after spending my time there and being diagnosed and everything, I am allowed to take care of myself and take care of my health. So I'm very grateful for that. So, but upon returning from Alaska, Brenton, I wasn't sure if I was going to stay in my home in Bakersfield or move down to Los Angeles to the coast a little bit. You know, it's just a different scene. That's all. I mean, I really care. I love Bakersfield. But when I decided to stay here in Bakersfield, when I got home, that encounter was still in my mind very much. I was very, for that whole minute there, I was, well, less than that, because, I was fighting for my life, and I felt, which I believe is true, but, for that 10 seconds, I was very startled, very scared, to my soul. Something went deep in there that startled me. And so I always had that in my mind, and I thought, as soon as I get well, I need to overcome this. I can't have fear of anything under my skin. The only thing I fear is God, and I'm gonna need God's help to overcome this. So little by little, I started getting better and trying to get myself ready of what I need to do, where do I need to go. I for sure I didn't want to go back to that exact same area because I was still, it's a work in progress. So what I did was I went a little bit lower in a different section, and about a year ago I started doing more research and trying to figure out, okay, how do I want to do this? And in January of this year, I went to Israel, and I try to get myself, and some people may understand it, and some people may not understand it, Brenton, but I went to Israel as a vacation to go see the Western Wall and to go pray and, to go put my heart there, leave my heart there. But I was also, even in my mind, the back of my mind, I'm trying to get myself ready. I want to make sure that I have a clear heart and a clear aura to be going to try and find these things. Because from that experience, I felt like if those things sense fear or sense that they're under your skin, just like a lion or a hyena or a tiger, any other major predator, if they sense that, they're on you. So I that's how far back I was like, I want to overcome this as soon as I get a chance, because I wanted to take back what was taken from me. So as soon as I got back from Israel, I started gearing up. I bought some cameras, and I started hiking more and doing more exercising. And I try to stay healthy, even though I'm working on my health. I work out at the gym, and I try to eat right, and so I can do the things that I want. So 5 months ago, since I got back, I started doing research, looking on Google Maps, looking up certain areas, looking up where I wanted to go. I know the lower end of the Sequoia. I've been up above Lake Isabella, but I had not gone up that far. So, and it goes up, another 40 miles. So I don't want to give away the exact area because I don't want to hurt these things. And I don't, people may get upset, but I don't want to be the cause of to anything that's going to interrupt what they have or what they're doing. So 5 months ago, I started going up there, and I started looking. I started driving back there, and I was trying to use my military experience, just like what you were talking about earlier, Brenton, about recon. I was in a heavy machine gun platoon with 50 cals and Mark 19s. I was one of the couple of battalion scout platoons. So, we were used for whatever the battalion needed us, and we were attached to tanks. So that was our jobs. We were next to tanks while we did our thing. I was with the group called Task Force Ripper. So it was very serious, and that was my first time my first thing at, 20 years old in something that was so real, life-threatening, but it was an honor to serve. And I think that for the rest of my life, I've always wanted a pinch of that adrenaline rush, that came from that combat experience. And I've tried, I did a couple of tandem skydives, and I've done bungee jumping and, some road roller coasters, stuff to try to get my blood pumping. So, a couple of years ago, I got into the cage with some tigers in Thailand, and that was in preparation for going out and to try and find these things. That's how far back I've been trying to prepare myself for this, Brenton. And to be honest, this last experience a week ago felt exactly like that. I felt, being back in that cove, I felt like being in the cage with tigers again. So, but let me back up. I apologize. So what I did was I went in, I searched those areas, and then I said, what if I was those things? Obviously, they're beings. I mean, they're human primate type. They're primates. So to get to from the mountain to the river for hunting, or just to come down and bathe or whatever. And I'm sure there's different water sources, but just like you said, Brenton, they observe, and there's a main campground at the bottom, and it's got one of those huge dumpsters that like it has the 4 wheels on it, and the truck comes, and it's like a dump truck. It lifts it up, and then it backs, it comes off the back. It's got a very large dumpster on it. So I thought, it's possible, maybe they may not rummage through the trash, but that smell has to be, if, like when I was in King Salmon in Alaska, the bears, they had to put chains and locks on the dumpsters, the flip dumps, the top flips over, where the truck comes and lifts it over the top and dumps it. They'd have to put locks on those because the grizzlies would come and boom, 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 would try and push and bite and everything they could to get into the garbage because of the smell. So, I mean, if somebody's throwing away chocolate wrappers and, whatever other else, marshmallows into the dumpster, it's very possible that it's going to lure them down. At night, I mean, especially out there, it's very, very dark. And I'm sure that's how they moved. I even bought, a night vision scope so I could see, to try and have a little distance to possibly see if I could catch one at night down at the campsite. So anyways, after doing the research, after a month, I made a choice, and there was a trail that went up, and then it breaks off. It breaks off to several other trails. So what I did was I hiked up the 2 miles, and it just happened so that the first spot that I checked, Brenton, I found something. And just from listening to your shows and stuff, because I didn't have a gun on me, all I had was some pepper spray and my little Rambo knife and my video camera. And like you said, sometimes they might think that the video camera is a gun, or some of them know what the video camera is now, so I busted out with my camera, and I was kind of talking to myself and, just talking to God, like, God, what am I doing? And I was strong enough, and I tried to pretend that I'm just getting the mountainside, and I'm looking, and I run my camera right across this thing that I saw, and I sent you a picture of it, and it was the red color hair, and very large. I thought that there was 2 or 3, and that they were huddled. And after I got the shot, I went back around the mountain. I went back down. But the thing is that this area, it's like a cove. When you go up, it's 2 miles up, and then you have to go back, like it's like a bend. You have to go behind the mountain. So you can, heck, I mean, I don't know if anybody could hear you if you yelled anyways from the 2 miles up, but from behind the little bend in the cove, I know for sure that nobody's going to hear you. I mean, you'd have to have one. I'm going to start carrying one of those foghorns with me from now on. I saw somebody on YouTube that, on one of the shows that said, you know, this will for sure alert somebody that if I need help. And I thought that's exactly what I need. But so anyways, so over the last 4 months, I had been back up there. I went up there 3 times, and I went back up there another time, but I didn't go up to the mountain. I knew that they could hear my little car, I have a Kia Soul, and, you know, it makes a little noise, a distinct little sound. And I mean, I'm sure that if there are other Kia Souls up there, but I mean, if I've been going up there, so I know they're very observant. So I mean, if they heard 1 or 2, I'm sure that they noticed that that's the one that's been coming up here, you know, leaving stuff up here on the mountain. So I took some eggs and some hot dogs and some bologna and left them up there at the spot. You know, just I couldn't help it. So this weekend I went up and I figured, so this is 5 months now of going up there. So this time I thought, all right, I'm going to go in for the kill this time. I'm going to go in. I've been up there a few times. I had been up, I had been up there last month, and I thought, okay, I didn't have any problems. I didn't see anything, though. So I said, I'm going to go up there, and this time I'm going to really see if I can't get some footage and see if I can't, like, spot them. I'm going to spend the time up there and look and videotape and go over everything. That's what I was thinking. So instead of hiking the 2 miles, I thought if I need to get to my truck faster, I'm too far away. So I started to drive my truck up, and I got about halfway, Brenton, and then at first I saw someone coming from the right, from and the mountain kind of goes down, and this person, and at first, and honestly, I thought, and this is my honest opinion, I thought it was an African-American woman. And I thought, what in the world is she doing up here by herself? Doesn't she realize that there's Bigfoot out here? That was my initial thought. And then she stopped in the middle of the road, right in front of me, about 40 yards. And I had my red glasses, their red lens glasses on, and I had both of my hands on the wheel, and I looked, and I'm like, what is that? Is that why is she stopping, and why is that woman stopping in the road? And I thought maybe she needs help, and then it clicked. I seen her blink, and I don't know if it wasn't like it was a distinct blink, and I seen the white of her eye, and then I made out the front of her mouth, the little mound, and then she had like a little mane of curly hair around her face, and I couldn't tell if the little mound, her mouth, it looked like an orangutan face, but large. And I couldn't tell if it had hair on it or if it was just the dark skin, like the grayish black skin, you know, like you would see on a silverback gorilla. So, and she stopped, she looked at me, she looked up at the mountain to the area that I've been going, she looked back at me, and she looked like she had attitude, like you're not gonna catch me with her body. But I also could see on her face fear, and it made my heart sink because that must feel terrible to feel hunted. And I thought, oh man, that's not what I want, but honestly, that's what I'm doing. I mean, I'm not going up hunting with a gun, but I'm going hunting with a video camera. And in 2 strides, 2 good strides, she popped off the road. Well, 2 strides. The first stride was off the road. The next stride was a good bit of ways, and then another stride down behind the little bush. So 3 or 4 strides, and she was gone. She looked to me like just a few months ago. This season, I went and I watched several high school track meets. And I enjoy. I go watch football and baseball, some wrestling, and this year, a few months ago, I went and watched the kids running track and field here in Kern County. And she looked, this Bigfoot, she was red. Just like the very first time I went up there, even the large ones were red. So, where am I? Okay. So, but as she leaves, I tried very hard with my glasses. But it was about 10 seconds. I stopped and I didn't want to do anything, like I said, because I felt that, I had to take a minute and figure out, okay, what am I doing? That's how thrown off I was by that look of fear that she had. But before I went up, I thought, they're scouts. There's a tribe up there. They've got to have scouts. I'm pretty sure they're scouts. And boom, what happens? A scout. Somebody pops out. She looked like, high school. The high school girl. She looked like one of the high school hurdlers or a high school volleyball player. She looked like a juvenile, and she was about 6 foot maybe. She was very healthy. She didn't look thick, like really over muscular or broad. She looked very fit. And she took off like, come on, follow me. And I thought, no, that's not what I'm here for. I'm going up. So from where I saw her, I drove my truck up a little bit to exactly where she was. And I didn't even look. I didn't even look to think about finding tracks. I was so focused on going up because I'm like, okay, they know I'm here. I have to be careful. I'm on alert now. So I have the stuff in my hands. And that day I carried a 22 pellet rifle, and I had the 18.3 grain pellets. That's all I had, and my video camera and my pepper spray. And I went up there, and the chirps. This was the chirps will come into play after. But so I go up there, and they're chirps, chirp, chirp. The squirrels, so they know that I'm coming in. So I go around the cove, and I'm playing it really cool. I walk to the back of the little cove, and I set everything down, and I bust out with my camera. And then, boom, I hear the first snap. Very, very loud. Very loud and clear. Snap 1. So I'm on the trail, and if I'm facing west, the mountain south of me is sloped up, and it goes up about 1,000 feet. And then there's a trail, and then there's the trail big enough for a truck. And then to my north, it slopes down and at a 45-degree angle, and it goes down about 20 yards. And then the width of this little gulch, this little bend, is about 10 yards flat, which has a little running creek through it from the mountain water, and then the next mountain starts up. It elevates up. But in that little bend there, that little flat area, there's bushes and trees, and then it goes down, and that's the trail that goes all the way down to the river. It conceals. Somebody could stay in that little valley and hide all the way down to the river, to the main road, to the campsite, and then down to the river. So that was the reason why I started checking that place that area in the first place. So I'm up there after about 10 minutes. So I get the first snap after 5 minutes. About 5 minutes later, I get the second snap. And it's windy, and it's kind of making me a little uneasy because I'm like, oh boy, okay, so they're snapping, so obviously they're giving me some kind of message. And I've learned that from your shows, you know, and when they're giving you messages, you better listen and pay attention. They're trying to tell you something. So I turn around, and anything that would catch my eye, I would start filming, you know, anything. I use my machine gunner technique where I'm not focused on any one thing. I just kind of looking out abroad, and if anything moves or a shadow or anything, then I zoom in on that. I focus on that, and then, you know, I'll get a shot of that, and then I'll back it out, and I'll wait for the next thing to catch my eye. So about 5 minutes later, Brenton, I turn around and I look down because I'm getting ready to start. Before the snaps, they were coming down from that little gulch. But I was filming the other side of the mountain for the first two. When I turned around, as soon as I turned around, I believe very much so that, well, not only did I hear a very loud snap, I believe I heard it sounded like a deep with a like a and I'm far, and I'm 25 yards away, and I kid you not, it's sunny and it's windy. But when I was in the Marine Corps, when we did live fires, and even from my combat stuff, well, when a mortar hit or something like boom, you could actually see like the sound wave. And I mean, from what I saw, my perception, I believe that I saw with the snap. When I heard the snap and that sound, I thought I saw an actual like sound wave come from a spot, but I didn't see nothing there. It was behind the bush. And I'm like, you know, I'm like thinking to myself, dang, I just saw that sound wave and I heard the noise of the snap come from that spot, and there's nothing there. I mean, there's this little bushy kind of stuff, but I mean, I'm like, I should be able to see something, but I didn't. So after that third one, I got a little uneasy, and I said, well, okay, because I had already been back there for about 15 minutes, and I'm thinking, I'm pushing it already because I stayed back here I've stayed back here already longer than I have before. Before I would kind of walk up there and, you know, for 7 minutes, and then I'd come back down. This time I'm in there with my camera out, and I'm in their face. I'm in their face with my camera, you know, zooming in. I mean, they can't see that, but I mean, I'm trying to get everything that I can. So on the way down is when I caught the slight brown. I had taken my glasses off so I could see better, and I caught that figure that I showed you that had the face shot and the hands, and I didn't see that yet, Brenton. I didn't. So I go down. I was up there around the bend, and so I'm leaving. I've got this feeling like it's time to go. It's time to go, and I'm not around the bend yet, but like before I came in, that squirrel that was chirping, I haven't even got around the bend yet, and it's chirping. And above me, I see movement about 10 or 15 yards up, move from one bush to another. It looked like a shadow. And I got a little nervous, not scared, I'm like, I'm so close, just be cool. Just all I want to do is get around the bend here, around this little mountain edge. And as soon as I got around the edge, I hustled down to my truck as fast as I calmly could. I got in my truck, and I didn't wait. I got in the car. I took off my gear real quick, and I went all the way down to the campsite. Now, instead of waiting to get home, I couldn't wait. I'm like, I want to see if I got, see what kind of footage I got. So I parked at the campsite, and I'm there for about 15 minutes. And in my rear view mirror, I see, just in a flash, it looked like, I didn't actually see the face. I saw the body. I saw the chest and arm motion. And it looked like the female that had been in the trail when I first went up a little over an hour before, an hour and 15 minutes before. And when I looked in my rearview mirror, it shot over to the right side, and I didn't want to get out of my car. I got a little, I didn't get frightful, but I got, I was cautious, and I didn't lock my door or anything. I didn't want to move. I just waited a few minutes, and I put my video camera away, and I said, I'll look at it when I get home. But I had taken a couple of pictures, and there's a campsite manager, a monitor. She stays there. She's seasonal. She lives there. It's an older woman, and she wanted to be out she didn't have any responsibilities. She wanted to be out on her own for a little bit. So she cleans the bathroom, and she makes sure that, if there's any trouble, she's got a radio to monitor somebody, to get a hold of somebody. So I stopped there, and I just asked her, I said, hey, can I ask you an honest question? And she said, about Bigfoot? And I said, yes. And she said, what? I said, have you had any reports? And she said, no, not that I know of. And I said, I just came down, and can I show you something? Actually, it was the day after, because I went back up there the next day, Brenton. The first day, I didn't see the video footage. I didn't see what I got until I got home. And I got home at 12:30, almost 1 o'clock in the morning that first night. I stayed out there. I got out there at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I stayed out there till midnight before I came home. And I was so surprised that I got the footage that I went back up there the next day, and I took some eggs and the bologna and stuff, and then I stopped and I told the woman, some people said, you know what, you shouldn't, or somebody, some people say you shouldn't say anything about it, but I thought in my heart that it's the right thing to do, because here we go, Brenton, that's my very first experience. That night when I stood out there till midnight, there was a couple of families out there that had 5, 6, 7-year-old little kids out there, that were out there hiking, and it's pitch dark, and they're just trying to do their thing. Now, I'm not saying that they did anything, but I from doing the research, I understand what's possible, so I think I did the right thing by telling her. What she does with that information, is up to her, because I listen to your stuff, to the shows and stuff, and they talk about the rangers who say that they don't exist, who have had incidents, and they have to say that they're grizzly bears that they encountered. So, do you think I did the right thing, or do you think I should have not said anything?
No, I think you did right. I mean, you have to do what you think you need to do. So, no one can tell you what you should do. You have to do what you think you need to do, where you're comfortable with it, and that's what it seems like you have done. So
I feel like I went and Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, where he goes back into the cave and he takes the skull and he puts the bag of sand and tries to get away. That's what I felt like. I mean, I felt like I was trying to get something. Do you know what I mean, Brenton? I don't feel wrong for what I did, because I believe that I have every right to be able to go out and look in, to go out and spend time in the local park and forest, and I can't hide or deny the photos and the pictures that I've got. I showed this one gal. I was out getting a haircut at one of our local barbershops, and she just came in at the last of our conversation, and she was a business gal. She was there to do some business with the tenants that have the barbershop, and she says, "What did you find?" And I said, "Oh, Bigfoot." I said, "I encountered some Bigfoot." And she had a hoot. She laughed so hard, she got her face was so red, so I didn't say anything. And then when I got out of the chair, I went and I took over a picture, and I said, "Well, I have this." And she says, and it's one of the pictures that I showed you, where it's got the face, it shows the hands and the body, and she says, I don't see anything. And then she says, "Oh, it looks like a bear." And I said, "Well, I mean, okay, you could say that, but I said, I don't really believe that's what you see, but that's okay." So sometimes I don't want to show anybody. I don't feel that I have to prove anything.
It's hard to show the pictures because typically these things hide well. Your story is what's convincing because these things hide in the bush. They're good at it. They are excellent camouflage, more than military people are. They're good at making sure you never focus on them.
Yes.
With light.
So it's hard to get a shot.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm telling you. I've been working on some stuff with some people from Honeywell, which are military contractors. I'm working on developing a system that is basically on a backpack with night vision, thermal, all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to defeat the focal issues, and that's one of the reasons I bought a new camera here recently. This not a regular like handy cam, is because I can control the focus. Because when you're in the woods, when you with the cameras these days will like focus on the nearest thing to you. So the camera that I bought here recently, you have your own control over the focal distance, and therefore you can set your focal distance.
The pictures on several of the pictures that I show you, well, it's the same, because I realized after I didn't realize that I was supposed to send you several pictures with one email, and I apologize once I figured out what you're saying. But, it shows they have, maybe it's possible that because it shows them, it's wearing some kind of animal on its head, and then on its shoulders. You can clearly see that.
There's many times that these creatures will take fur or skins or whatever and drape it over themselves so that they are hidden more so, and it makes it a very confusing picture. Piercings through the nose. They'll hold things in front of their face to break the silhouette up.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of times they will do that more than anything. They'll hold like a stick in front of their face because it breaks it up into more than one quadrant. Yeah, so it's really hard to get a convincing picture.
I think if you can make out a head, a forehead, a nose, most, and that would be a good shot, because they're going to wear something to cover. Like, I thought, like, one of the pictures, it had like a dog or a small dog, and then it had like a raccoon over its head, and I'm thinking, Man, look at these things. And these, people are calling these things, animals, but they're more, just like you said, I think they're more than that. I mean, as far as like their smarts, that's like you said, obviously if they're doing piercings, they're using tools. Okay, there's another area that it's well, I don't like to say, well, it's one of the fishing holes, and about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and I was going there for a month, but a couple of years ago, I went there with my cousin, and we went out there a few times, and I had a feeling, and this is before I decided to, well, I mean, it was kind of in my mind, but I hadn't thought about, I'm going to go find these things. I want to, I was still, I'm not ready yet, but I had a feeling of, there's a Bigfoot here. I didn't tell my cousin anything, but I felt something. I can't explain it, and I heard that's one of the only times that I've because I hear people say, I had this overcome me, I had fear, I had that. I mean, other than seeing something and having it scare me, that night in the cabin but like you said, that was probably infrasound without a doubt. And obviously, I think at the fishing hole, it had to be the same thing, because Bigfoot came to my mind, and over a few months later, I started having like blood coming from when I had a little urine, or at night when I had I'd have a discharge or something, and my undies would have blood in them, and I was very startled, but I didn't know what was going on. I went to the doctor, I went to the hospital, and I told him, hey, I've got blood, and they ran tests, and they said, well, everything seems to be okay, and then I heard on the show that people that have been hit with infrasound have actually had blood come out of their urine. And I thought, and that's, honestly, I thought that was it. God showed me what I was wondering. So, because I was kind of sick, worried sick a little bit of, what is going on?
That was Scott Carpenter and his friend.
Okay, well, because Brenton, like, I've been going out to this area. There's a big lake. It's called Lake Buena Vista. There's a big lake, and then behind it, there's the duck. There's a California aqueduct, and it's like a field, and it's not forest, but it's got brush. You know what I mean? It's like a field, but it's got brush. There might be a little tree here or there, but most of it's dry brush. It's like what a desert would be. It's dry brush, and and then the bottom of the grapevine is the water source that goes all the way to the bottom of the grapevine, and then from the grapevine, which is just a 30-minute drive from town, that's the beginning of the valley, and then you have the Tejon Ranch, and then the Angeles National Forest, which has Lake Pyramid, which is a huge couple of mountain ranges, and then connecting to that, you have, which is connecting to those, is the Tehachapi Mountains, which connect to the back of the Sequoia National Forest. So, I mean, and then, like, if you go west, then you go to the coast, which is like Pacific Coast Highway. There's been sightings in Santa Barbara. So, I mean, a lot of this area is connected to, well, I think it's like ends at the Angeles National Forest. I think that's like the end from Sacramento to the Grapevine. And then I've been listening to some of the researchers, and it says that from the 70s, one of these guys, he believes that they migrate to Mexico, from Mexico up to Canada, from Canada back down to Mexico, depending on the size of the tribe, depending on the food source, depending on, how they're, the territory, a lot of this stuff. And I thought that was very interesting. And he was saying that, basically this is like a hot spot here on the outside of the valley, but there's behind, just about 6 weeks ago, behind the lake, we get there and it's almost dark, just like it is right here, right now, in where I'm at, and I hear a noise, and I'm like, holy cow, and I get home, and I'm looking, and I'm like, man, I gotta hear this, and it's called the Umatilla Screamer, and there's a noise that it makes like a hyena noise, and then it starts laughing. Well, what I heard was just the hyena noise without the laughter, and it was just one good little shout, the noise. And there were some people there that must have seen something, because they were looking in the field. They actually pulled their truck and put like their bright lights pointing to the field, and they had flashlights, and they were looking back into that field, behind the creek and stuff. And I thought, man, there's something there. But over the past 6 months, I've been going there because something's going on. About 2 or 3 months ago, because it's 30 miles out of town. It's out, it's kind of far, and it's a little mountain range out there, and it's open, and there's a Thule elk reserve, and it's got elk that they live there. They breed elk. They're trying to rebuild the elk again, the elk population. It's been there for 40 years. So, and then there's rabbit, there's fox, there's raccoon, skunk, and so what I've been doing is I've been hollering. I've been doing calls on the way out and on the way in. And on one occasion, on the way back by one of the large orchards, I saw a shadow shoot across the highway, and I almost double-footed my brake. I mean, and there was a car coming that I could see put their brights on, and then put their brights on. So obviously they seen something also, and they were from a farther distance than I was. So I mean, like we were saying about being susceptible, I think, and I'm not saying that I don't like it, because I'm interested, and I'm having the guts to want to deal with it. I'm not saying that I'm not trying to be a smarty pants and saying that I'm not frightened, but I think that my heart is in the right place. I'm not saying that I know that that's not going to hurt me, but there was another time that I was doing calls and while driving, and I pulled over and I did calls, and then I went about a mile to the last spot, the last area of the fishing hole before heading back into town the 30 miles. And I get there and I throw my pole in the water fishing, and about 10, 12 minutes later, Brenton, about between 12 and 14, 15 minutes, I smell a skunky smell, but I mean, usually when there's a dead skunk around or something, as soon as you get out, you'll smell it, because it's already dead. It's been in the area. Well, it came up, like it slowly came, and it wasn't like that overpowering, like, when you smell a dead skunk that's been hitting the road. It was it wasn't quite so strong, but what kind of got me started was it also smelled like a wet moss. Not because it smelled like out there at the aqueduct, it smells like wet moss, but I mean, this smelled different. And I got my flashlight and I started looking around, and I even started looking at the water, thinking, I'm just wanting to be careful. And there was there was somebody else on the other side of the bridge that was fishing. They were fishing there when I stopped. But I packed up my gear and I headed back into town. And it's kind of crazy that actually it was this night, the same night that the skunky smell from doing the calls, that heading back into town was when I saw the shadow. That was in one night. So, I mean, there's 3 things that have happened over the last 6 months out in that area. Now, I only have my intuition, but like I told my younger brother, I'm going out there, and the only way somebody is going to believe me is if I get proof, photo proof, video or photo proof. Otherwise, I'm not going to say a word until I get that. That way I can send it to Brenton. You want me to send you 5 pictures?
Yeah.
Okay, Brenton.
All right.
I didn't mean to talk so long, Brenton. Once I got going, it just kept coming.
That's okay, buddy. You did a fine job. And I hope everybody out there likes this story. And if anyone out there has a story they'd like to share, you can share it at brentonsawin@gmail.com. If you want to contribute, go to PayPal me in the description. You'll see the link, and it's super easy to use, and every contribution is very much appreciated. God bless, and we'll see you on the next show. Bam.